Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today we're going to interview movie and TV director and producer David Winning. He's a veteran who has directed more than 43 feature films and 29 television series. Projects like Van Helsing, the final season, Stargate Atlantis, Friday the 13th, the TV series, and a long list of other very successful movies and television projects that have garnered him more than 90 international awards and nominations. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, like, comment, and follow us for free. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so I encourage you to click on that notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. We also ask that you post a link to today's show on all your social media to help spread the word. Now, let's say hello to David Winning. Hello, David. Welcome to the John Ark Show. How are you today, sir?
I'm good, John. Thank you so much for asking me to be part of your show. It's exciting.
Oh, it's my pleasure, sir. David, you began your career at the age of 22 when you directed your first film called Storm on a micro budget of $50,000. Now, everybody knows how hard it is to make a good movie, but not many people realize how much harder it is to make a good movie on a micro budget like 50K. Tell me how difficult it was for you to get your foot in the door of the industry and to make that first movie on that budget.
Yikes. Well, I was sort of a kid from the prairies making Super 8 millimeter films in my backyard in my teen years, kind of coming up and having big dreams about somehow trying to get into Hollywood. And I didn't know how that was ever going to happen. So in my early 20s, I was raising money to go to film school. My dad was helping me, and I was doing all sorts of odd jobs, waitering and bouncing and ticket taking and any place I could find to raise money in my 20s. And then I had this kind of brainstorm in the early 80s. I thought, why not, instead of going to film school, why don't I put all this money into my first feature film? So I shocked my dad, obviously, but he kind of agreed with the idea. So we went out and I got a group of friends together, and we shot a really low budget movie called Storm in the summer of '83, way back when. And it took me most of my 20s to finish it. So it was kind of like I created my own film course, which was great. And I think there's a great advantage to being naive when you're young and thinking, you don't realize how monumental or huge this task is. Like, how can you make a feature film? But we went out and we did it, and it took me 4.5 years to finish, and I actually sold it. And I think my idea was at the time was, I just want to try this, and if it doesn't work, then I'll go and work in a bookstore. I'll go have a regular 9-to-5 job, but at least I'll have tried it once, and I won't always wonder if I maybe should have made the jump. But so that's kind of how I started.
Did you film on 35 or 16?
No, it was shot on 16 millimeter film.
Okay.
Nobody uses film anymore. Of course, I haven't shot film in 15 years, so the younger of your folks aren't going to know what we're talking about. But yeah, in the good old days, we used to shoot film. We shot it in 16 millimeter really cheaply. It was kind of like a 3-to-1 ratio. It was kind of like we had enough film to do 2 takes of everything, and then if we didn't get it, we were done. And then after it was finished, 3 or 4 years later, we raised another round of money to blow it up to 35 millimeter, and then it eventually got purchased by a company called Canon in the States, who used to do all the Stallone movies and Chuck Norris action movies, and they released it, and the rest is history. Took a long time, but it was released in theaters internationally and way back in the late 80s, and it did fairly well. They sold like 20,000 units, which was considered great for the time. I think they made more money than I did, but that's kind of the way the business works. But
Canon was a big deal back then. Canon was a big deal back then.
Yeah, they were. Canon was definitely. Menachem Golan and Yoram Globus, the two Israeli guys that started the company. They were pioneers, I think, in the late 80s of getting a lot of action movies released fairly widely all over the world, and we just kind of got in on that gravy train, which was great.
Now, when I see somebody as prolific as yourself, then that tells me you must have a very serious work ethic. I look at the various projects you've had in various stages of development, production, and post-production over time. Tell me about the process you have for managing your workflow.
Well, I mean, I've always been very dedicated. I feel like I accepted this challenge of wanting to be successful. And once I kind of got the first film under my belt, I thought, well, you're stuck now. You're on this train. You got to keep making movies. So when you look back at it, because I've been doing this for 35 plus years now, and when you look back on it, people say, did you have this all planned? And no, as you know, no career is ever planned. I mean, you just, one thing leads to another. And my first film got me into the Directors Guild of Canada, which put me into a big book that producers all over the country would look at. And as luck would have it, there was a TV series shooting in the late 80s in Toronto called Friday the 13th, the series, a syndicated TV series. Mm-hmm. Some director fell out on that, and they flipped through the book and they said, winning sounds positive, hire this guy, And so I flew down to Toronto and started work on this series. And when I got there, they're like, how old are you? And I'm like, well, I was 35. I was 26 at the time, but never done anything, never been on a real live set with real crew and real professional actors and stuff. And I just, lucky enough over the years to just keep constantly working. I don't think I've ever turned down a job. There's been some slow years. I mean, I guess I have a strong work ethic because I love to get things done. I don't ever turn down work because I like the challenge of kind of meeting new people and working in different places. I've been able to travel a lot, which has been great. I did a series for ABC called Dinotopia, which was shot in Budapest, which was a ton of fun. And I did a movie in a 600-year-old castle in Scotland, one of the Merlin movies years back, which was a lot of fun. Worked with Sean Connery's son, Jason, who was a big deal in England. He was in a Robin Hood series there. And so the job's given me amazing travel opportunities, and it's great to meet people. And it's been a lot of fun. Hope it keeps going.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, speaking of castles and old castles, when we were little, we took a vacation in Eastern Europe, and my mother took me to an old castle in Poland. And this thing was probably somewhere between 500 and 800 years old. And, as you well know, in Europe, they build walls that are 3 feet thick for these castles. So you can really, and the churches as well, you can Absolutely. Really feel the passage of the centuries. It's not like here where you walk into a 20-year-old building and it feels old.
Oh, I know.
There, centuries, you can feel the walls resonating with time.
It was amazing. It was an old castle south of a place called Peebles in western or eastern Scotland and near the Gallowshiels area. And it was it had been attacked by Cromwell 600 years back. And it was just amazing to walk around buildings. You think this is like, even the hotels in England, it was my first time over there, prepping the show, and just the history of the country was amazing. And you come back to Canada and you think we're like 150 years old, barely. And the States has, long history, but nothing like Europe.
I'm a producer with more than 100 celebrities on my payroll. And when I look at the people I do business with, I can usually guess where their careers are going to go by the seriousness of their work ethic. And also, it's going to sound corny, but the speed with which they walk. If I'm walking quickly and they're keeping pace, that's a good sign. Yep. If they're 2 miles behind, that's not a good sign. Mm-hmm. But when you're hiring cast and crew, what are the qualities you look for before you offer somebody a job?
Well, I've done a lot of work in television where you're not necessarily hiring everybody, that the crew's already been hired ahead of time. But I've just, on kind of an offshoot of the question, I've always spent my career trying to create environments that are really fun for people to work in. And, I have a reputation of being a fairly friendly, fun guy. We're Canadian, so we're, annoyingly polite people. But I've always tried to, build an environment and build a set where people are going to do their best work. And I like to hire like-minded people. So I like to hire people that are fun and have the reputation of being, not difficult to work with. This is most of my job is kind of like psychologist more than director. You're really trying to juggle a lot of people problems and things. And so the less people problems you start with, obviously, the smoother things go. So I like to have a good time when I work, and I like to work really efficiently. I like to be the one that eats all the stress. The people around me, just try to keep them comfortable in a good place where they can do their best work. And I guess that's what I hope my strength has been through the years. But it's just been it's so varied when you look at the things I've done. If I had thought 30 years ago that I would have been doing, I've kind of done a bit of everything. Right now, people probably know me most from a lot of Hallmark Christmas movies that I've been doing the last 3 or 4 years. But then at the same time, I've also been working on a complete opposite end of the spectrum, a really violent vampire series on Sci-Fi Channel called Van Helsing, that's on Netflix if people want to try and catch it. So that's definitely having both ends of the spectrum covered. I've got the happy family stuff, and I've got the crazy, creepy vampires.
Did you shoot the Van Helsing project domestically, or was that in Europe somewhere?
No, it was Vancouver. I didn't work on the last season. They did 5 seasons. The last season was shot a lot in Europe because they went back to the old Dracula castles to just get some real, earthy kind of feel for the Dracula stories. But most of it was shot in Vancouver. Most of my career really has been in Vancouver, believe it or not, which kind of became a hotbed for science fiction, as you probably know, in the 2000s, and a lot of the Stargate series I've worked on, and a lot of the DC and Marvel comic shows are shooting out of Vancouver now. So
Does Canada still offer those great tax credits they used to offer?
that's why folks are here. Yeah, there's all sorts of kickbacks and tax breaks just for shooting in Canada, which is great. Canada's really strange too, because provincially, like a California director can work in Texas and a New York director can work in Montana, but in Canada we're very provincial. You can kind of only work in your lane. So British Columbia directors mainly stay in BC, and Ontario directors are there too, which is kind of limiting. But I think the reason they do it is because they're trying to develop Indigenous talent in the different provinces in Canada.
And I don't know what it is about Canadian DNA, but every Canadian I have ever met has been extremely friendly, completely lacking in the crazy egos that you see in America, and really professional. I was amazed. We used to drive over from Michigan over to Windsor all the time, and the difference between Michigan women and Canadian women was dramatic.
Yeah.
The Canadian women were extremely friendly.
Well, as I say, we're exceedingly polite. There used to be a joke on set about how do you make a Canadian apologize? Punch him in the face. That's kind of where we are in Canada. We're fun, happy people, and we kind of keep it light. And also, as you know, Canada's become a big, or for years was producing a lot of great comedians, like a lot of the Saturday Night Live and SCTV folks that went south.
Wasn't Dan Aykroyd Canadian? I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Actually, I got to be careful because some people came out of Chicago north through Second City and then kind of pretended they were Canadian. I think Dan Aykroyd's Canadian. Yeah. Fact check. Fact bubble.
Tell me how the industry has changed over the years. Are the shooting schedules getting tighter, shorter? Are the budgets getting larger or smaller? What have you noticed over the last 5 years?
Well, I've done a lot of TV series. I think I've done almost 30 TV series over the last 30 years. And every season of the TV series always gets lower budget. The next season, it's always like, great, let's do it for less. Let's do it for less. It's just kind of a business model. And it's something you kind of just accept it. I think the indie industry has kind of exploded in the last years, because of Sundance and because of all sorts of avenues that people have. I mean, if I was starting out nowadays, I think I would have a much easier time because the whole digital technology is so much more hands-on. I mean, you can get a broadcast quality video camera from your corner electronics store, and you can go out and make your own movies. Back when I started, it was like you had to scrounge just to get film stock and try to find a TV news channel that would lend you a film camera for 3 or 4 weeks to get your movies off the ground. So I don't know, digitally, I think digitally and the technology is what's really changed over the last decades for me and the way things are shot. And when digital started out, it just, it wasn't near as good as it is now. Now it's incredible. I mean, a lot of us diehard film guys were like, "Oh, we're never going to switch to digital because it's never got the, the depth of quality in the image." But it's pretty incredible stuff they're coming up with now with 4K and 8K projection and incredible.
Yeah, the new Samsung smartphones shoot in 8K.
Exactly.
So that's amazing.
So that's what's happening now. There's a lot of people that are shooting movies with their phones, which is that's different. I never did that when I was a kid, but I think it's a good thing because anybody has stories to tell. And I always say, people say, how do you get into the film business with no money? I think that one of the secrets, I think, is if I had been starting out again, I think what I would have loved to have heard was just go out and shoot a trailer for the movie that you don't have enough money to make. Go out and shoot a little 2-minute sample of the movie that doesn't yet exist, and then try to sell that as your director's business card.
I used to work as a producer for Oprah back in the 90s, and back then, we had an entire producer's floor. We had directors, we had a studio, we had Oprah, and now we can essentially replicate all of that on a desktop computer.
Yep.
Years later, so it's amazing.
And all the incredible visual effects now that you can do basically, at home, just unbelievable.
So if the typical director has to make a decision now between casting a really good actor with a modest social media following or an average actor with a huge social media following? Which direction do you think that director or the studio is likely to go in?
John, you know the answer to this as well as me. It's going to be the person who has the highest promo. So it's always going to be the YouTube star. I think one of the biggest lessons I ever learned in the film business was when I finished Storm in '87. We were busy trying to get our next film off the ground. It took me 4 years. I thought, well, I got because Storm came out and got pretty good reviews, and I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. These people are going to call me up and throwing me money to make the second film. Nothing. 4 years of just like crickets. And one day we had a script and we had everybody ready to go. And one day somebody said, do you know the character actor that you may know from Canada, Michael Ironside, who's done a ton of movies? Do you know Michael Ironside? I said, no. He said, well, send him the script. He read the script, and 3 weeks later we were fully funded. And I realized that the whole business is so star driven and promo driven that people, they don't care who I am or who wrote the script or what it's about. Even it's about seeing the Kardashians or the well, maybe not Johnny Depp now, but the latest big star and Timothy Chalamet. There you go. I'm trying to be as topical as I can be. The biggest star of the time. That's who they want to see in the movies now. So I realized it was just a star-driven business, and that kind of changed my focus of how to try to make independent films. Really kind of starts with the stars, which is fine.
By the way, you mentioned Johnny Depp. Do you think this trial is going to make him bigger or smaller than ever? What are your thoughts? I don't know if you've seen the trial or not.
I think the whole thing is just embarrassing on both sides. I think it's a public spotlight on just horrible behavior on both sides. I think it's just like, I just think it's sad that relationships kind of dip to the level that whoever's right or wrong. Obviously they both made mistakes, but I just think the whole thing's embarrassing. And it's all about money. They're trying to, I understand Johnny's feeling like his career has been trashed, which is true. And Amber probably feels like her career has been trashed. So I don't know. It's just, it's kind of it's an embarrassing thing to watch. I kind of skipped a lot of it because I kind of realized what it was. It seems like a tabloid sort of show, but,
so lately, I've been enjoying a lot of the 10-episode series out there, like Narcos and Ozark. All things being equal, what do you think makes more money these days? A 2-hour major motion picture that you have to pour a lot of marketing money into, or a 10-hour miniseries on Netflix? What would you guess?
I think probably the miniseries. I'm a huge Ozark fan. Don't tell me anything because I'm not finished it yet. I'm just in the last.
the last 7 or 8 episodes are amazing.
I've been so afraid somebody's going to tell me. I don't want to know how it ends. By the time this airs, it may be all over anyway. But I think the miniseries and the way people watch series now and shows binging things. I remember years ago when 24 came out, which I was a huge fan of, the Kiefer Sutherland action series. We would wait every December until the DVDs were released. This is before Netflix and streaming services. And then you basically sit down and give yourself a heart attack in 10 days watching an entire, action-packed cliffhanger series. But nowadays, a series drops on Netflix and everyone's seen every episode in 48 hours, 24 hours. It's kind of, it's kind of fun too, because people like they want to stop. It's very, it's like you're glued to stuff and you can't stop watching. But I try to force myself I want to pace myself. So I got a series because I'm always depressed when the series ends. So you try to pace them out over a few weeks, like the good old days,
If somebody called you and said, "Listen, we're going to give you the next season of Narcos, but it's a 12-month shooting schedule," what would you say?
Oh, I'd take it. I'd love to work on stuff like that. It would be so much fun to sing. One of the best things about working on any kind of series is the whole thing becomes a family when you're working with people that long. And it's so much fun to think about, the whole, I really think TV series with the development of the characters that can take place and the building drama that can happen. It's almost more like reading chapters of a book when you're a kid. The 2-hour movies are just over, but series, I don't know, it seems like it pulls in the audiences and they seem to be doing so much. In the old days, none of the big directors would work in TV. And now all the directors and big folks and some of the big actors are heading to television because they realize it's where the money is and it's where the audience is now, especially with COVID. I think COVID kind of changed viewing habits over the last 2 years. Everybody was just holed up in their living rooms. They had to find something to entertain themselves with.
By the way, how expensive was it adhering to COVID protocols in Canada for your shooting schedule? Was it very expensive? Because in the South, I mean, in the U.S., other producers are telling me it's adding 25% to their budgets.
20, yeah, I was going to say it's about 20. Well, I wouldn't say 25, but 15 to 20% of the budgets kind of have been raised to just keep everybody safe. Vancouver was pretty proud of themselves because I think they were one of the first production centers that started up once COVID sort of began to settle a little bit. I don't know if it's ever going to settle, but and we've been really proud of the fact that we've been able to keep people really safe. It's strange working that way. It's a very because it's kind of a people business, and you're in everybody's face all day. But aside from the actors, when they're actually filming, everybody's wearing masks all day, and everybody's being tested. But it definitely. I mean, when I first heard about it, I thought, geez, as if filming needs to be slowed down any more than that. But because you're trying to grasp for every minute during a filming day to get things happening, and it definitely has slowed down production a little bit. But that doesn't matter because you want people to be safe. And
By the way,
the actors are most protected. So,
by the way, when you shoot your next movie project or TV project, how big is your production team? How many people typically do you have on your production team, and what's the shooting schedule like?
well, the TV series generally that I work on are usually 8 days of prep and 7 or 8 days of prep, and then 7 days of filming. It's usually even a week. Sometimes it's 6 days, but most television series are 6 or 7 days of filming. The TV series or the TV movies that I've been working on, the Hallmark movies, generally are about 15 days of filming, and before that, obviously 15 days of prep. And the old days, good old days, it was more like 2 months of filming or 30 to 40 days of filming. So, and mainly the reason is because labor costs are so high, you can't really afford more days of filming. So they try to compress everything as much as possible. So you end up shooting, anywhere from 9 to sometimes 12 pages of script every day. So you're scrambling, and everything has to be really organized like an army to make sure that it's as efficient as possible. But it's kind of roughly where the schedules have. I did one of the Christmas movies I did a few years ago with Lacey Chabert was 11 days, which was really crazy. But film turned out really well. Ended up one of the top 5 New York Times best Christmas movies of 2014 years back. So I was really proud of that. But 11 days is a little bit scary. 15 days is kind of the norm, but it's still incredibly fast work.
How many hours a day do you think?
Well, you have to keep within the budget of, what the company wants. So usually we don't shoot more than 11 and a half hours, 12-hour days. Some of the movies and some of the horror stories you've been hearing about, people go ridiculous long hours and, 15, 16-hour days. And that's one of the things that the unions in Canada and I think in the States have been trying to fight against, to try to, just for the safety of crew people, driving home and falling asleep late at night after these really long shifts. But also because you want people to have a family life too, go home to the kids and actually have a normal life. So we try to keep the shooting down to 11, 12 hours.
And how many people on your team between cast and crew on average?
I think it's the movies for television are pretty small. It's about 100 people, maybe 120 sometimes. And the TV series are relatively the same. They have bigger departments. And when you're doing a television series, you'll be prepping one show while another director and another crew of wardrobe people and producers are prepping that show. So it's a checkerboard style, and the filming crew on a TV series is just nonstop. Sometimes they'll have a second director of photography, but most of the times on series the crew just works straight through.
Now, the major studios are still doing these deals where they sometimes pay salary plus back-end participation that can pay actors and directors for years after the movie debuts. The streaming services tend to only pay up front, and then they pay the actors nothing after that, for the most part, I hear. What is your assessment of those differences in the marketplace?
Oh, I can't complain because I've been, I get residuals for stuff I did 10 years ago still, which is, I'm in a different position, obviously, because the directors tend to get a little bit of residual protection years after, which has been great. But I haven't really noticed a lot of difference. I don't, my contracts have, even with the streaming service and this vampire series I mentioned for Netflix, it's salaries haven't really changed for me. But I can't speak of what happens on the lower end of the scale. I know that the guilds in Canada and again, maybe in the States are also always trying to fight for a little protection of the people at the bottom end, make sure that they get at least, minimum wage. And also, like I mentioned, to protect their working hours so that they aren't falling asleep at the wheel. literally and figuratively.
When you're directing or producing a new movie or TV show, what is your greatest priority? Is it coming up with visually stunning scenes that the audiences will remember for years, or characters, showing your characters in the best possible and most memorable light? What do you think has the greatest impact?
I think, well, like I said, I mean, I try to create environments where people are doing their best work and having a good time, and I like to have a good time, and then secretly make a great movie or a great TV show while all that's happening. But I mean, I think you in Canada, obviously, we're trying to highlight the beautiful scenery in a lot of these shows. I think that's why a lot of companies have come north, because British Columbia and all parts of Canada and lots of parts of the States are beautiful. And we try to highlight a lot of the Hallmark movies in some ways are kind of like travel logs. I know they've been doing ones that have gone to Europe and Italy and stuff. So I think you just try to highlight whatever you figure out what the best skill is, or what the best quality of a particular script is, and then you just try to highlight it and just do your best you can. The one thing about television series is when you come in as a TV director, you're always you have a kind of a dual purpose, because you want to stay in line with the TV series, but you're also trying to stand out a little bit. So you're trying to do something a little bit different visually and innovative, but you can't really stray too far from the Bible of the series, because fans don't want to see something completely different. They like their characters.
So let's pretend tomorrow morning you wake up and you have the greatest movie idea you've ever had, and 2 days later you bang out a script. You love the script. Everybody loves the script. What do you think will give you the greatest return financially? Is it positioning it for a theatrical 2-hour theatrical release, or maybe a 10-hour miniseries on a streaming service? If it was your money. If it was
my money, I think honestly I've really been fascinated by exploring the longer form miniseries and television and the Netflix idea. Only because that's what's really grabbed me. And I thought you always want to kind of imitate what you thought was fun when you were growing up. I mean, I used to love thrillers and movies and stuff, but we didn't have this continuing. Well, we had TV series obviously when I was a kid, but not this, the streaming idea where you can, like I said, just watch a 14-hour movie or whatever, watch the entire series in one sitting. Take a sedative after some of these shows when you binge too much. But I think I would probably steer towards streaming services and things. It seems to be the wave of the future.
And I've never done business with Netflix, but from what I understand, if you bankroll the production and then you come to them, you get a much better deal with them. So,
well, I think, I mean, everything's really changing. In the old days, I know Sci-Fi Channel used to offer like a $750,000 license for the movies, and then you'd come up with the other 750, and you'd basically make like $1.5 million movie, which is what a lot of the budgets are for these TV movies. But I think there's nothing like that anymore. They don't offer anything that large for licenses to get films off the ground. So I don't know. It's a brave new world. It changes every year. It seems like how people get movies off the ground. But I've been fortunate because I've been working for other people for decades, which is great. I always have had this passion to get back to the indie world, which is where I started. But it's hard to do that. It's hard to raise money and face all those headaches. But it's, you obviously have way more creative control. So it's something I'm still wanting to try and get back to and explore.
And it's time consuming. I know a lot of A-list actors who burn through a lot of time just raising money for their favorite project.
Yeah. Well, like I said, with my first feature, Storm, I mean, obviously it's your first movie, so you got a lot of energy when you're younger. But I mean, that was 5 years of my life, 4.5, 5 years of my life to get that movie made. I mean, thank God I did it because I had the passion for it, and I wouldn't have really have had the career without that first launching pad movie. But it takes time. It's and then the other avenue is there's a lot of people that kind of work on a lot of different things and are in always various stages of development and stuff too. But I've been fortunately pretty busy with TV and film projects the last few years that I haven't had to push myself back into the indie world, but I definitely think that's more challenging. So I'd like to try to get back to that. You want to write your own stories and tell your own stories. And that's kind of why I got into the business.
Can you do both? Can you spend 80% of your time working for whoever you're working for now and 20% of your time working on your favorite indie project?
I guess I'm going to find out. I'm on a bit of a hiatus now, but hopefully the business usually kicks in the late spring now with, churning out the Christmas movies in the summer where everybody's wearing parkas and you're rolling fake snow on grass lawns. That whole circus is about to begin. But no, I definitely like to try to find a way to balance a little bit of the personal stories and get back to where I started, making Super 8 movies in the backyard.
By the way, has there ever been a Christmas movie ever made by anybody that wasn't universally loved by everybody? I mean, how can a Christmas movie go wrong, don't you think?
Yeah, well, I think I've been working for Hallmark now for off and on for 4 or 5 years. I think I started, yeah, and I've done mostly Christmas movies, but I've done all seasonal movies. And I think what Hallmark Channel specifically and what family movies do, I think, is they just offer a safe harbor for people.
Yeah.
And in dark times, I think people drift to that kind of stuff because there's a comfort in being able to sit around and actually watch a movie as a family like we did when we were kids, and you always know. I mean, movies are a little corny, and at the same time, you always know that things are going to end up in a good way. It's Pleasantville, and it's and they're positive love stories and they're positive romances, and who doesn't like that? It's a little bit inspirational. When I first got offered the jobs, I thought, I don't know. I mean, because I was doing a lot of action movies and horror movies and kids series. I've done a bit of everything, but I thought, why not make something that makes people feel good? I love feel good entertainment. I think there's a challenge in making even corny stuff dramatic and wonderful and fun and tear jerking and stuff. And I think that's my job, is to try to make any of this stuff as good as you can. And you'd like to think maybe this stuff will live on after you, because certainly these movies rerun forever. So I'll be
especially if they're sprinkled with some humor. Look at Home Alone. Year after year, that movie still makes kids laugh.
Yeah. No, I love humor. I tend to try to inject a lot of humor in the stuff, because I have a great respect for comedy, and that's kind of what I always really wanted to do. But I fell into drama and horror and monster movies and kid shows, and so you try to put a little humor in anything, because it makes things even more fun.
100 years, it's almost 100 years later. If you look at some of the original Three Stooges shorts, there's still some beautiful comedy in that stuff. It's physical comedy, but there's still some beautiful. The kids react. Kids love it.
Laurel and Hardy and Charlie Chaplin, and my ultimate idol for that era was Buster Keaton. Some of the amazing stuff that they did, and some of the amazing, fun cliffhanger, action-packed stuff. It was just, it's awe-inspiring. Chaplin's work specifically. Just some amazing stuff they did back then.
So I'm hearing from a lot of A-list actors and writers that their ideas and projects are being stolen all the time. They're being stolen by agents, they're being stolen by studios, and they're being stolen by other actors and writers. All one has to do is look at some of the lawsuits that have been filed and settled over the years to see how common this problem is. What are your thoughts on this phenomenon?
Well, it's a whole complicated world of intellectual property. I think the secret is when you come up with a good idea, you just got to get it produced and out there before anyone has a chance to borrow it. I think back to the days when, like, originators, like even in the 70s when George Lucas was coming up with the Star Wars concept, and he took it to 20th Century Fox, and they thought it was going to be nothing. And so they wanted to pay him nothing for it. And they said, what do you want for it? And he said, well, I wouldn't mind the ancillary rights, the toy rights and stuff. Well, that's not going to be anything. Sure, we'll give you that. And of course, George Lucas made millions just off the toys off Star Wars. And so I think coming up with an original idea like that and just believing in it and pushing it through, it's an example of somebody that just took off and made millions. Although I don't know if that was his intention. I think he really just wanted to tell good stories. So I don't know. I've never had trouble having things stolen from me, and I also think it's the highest form of flattery to be imitated, I guess. So if you're doing something and someone does something similar, that means they liked it. But I don't know. There's so many stories still to tell, and so many movies and TV shows to make. I don't know. I think I personally haven't had any issues with stuff being stolen. There's all sorts of ways you can copyright things legally, and Library of Congress stuff and the Writers Guild and things. If you write something, there's certainly smart ways you can do to protect the work until you can get it made. But I don't know. I guess I think of the world as a nicer place than maybe it is.
That's a very healthy Canadian attitude, sir.
Yeah, there you go.
So there are some directors who feel that the best way to make an obscene amount of money from a movie or a reality TV show isn't box office or streaming anymore. What these guys are doing to generate mountains of money is they will own or create a business a real business in the real world and then feature that business in their movie or reality TV show, and then use that to keep driving sales for their business going into the future. You know, the West Coast Chopper guys, all those guys.
It used to be called, as you know, it used to be called payola.
Yeah.
Back in the days when it was illegal, and now it's kind of turned around and it's become a way people promote themselves, which is fine.
Yeah.
Found a way to make money off product placement.
Jesse James and his biker reality show, I forget what it was called, but he was on I think it was West Coast Chopper, if I'm not mistaken. But Jesse James, he talked to Walmart about doing a merchandising deal, and everybody was laughing at him. They said nobody sells T-shirts and tchotchkes at Walmart. So Jesse did one of the first deals, and he made hundreds of millions of dollars off just that Walmart license.
Well, it's the McDonald's principle. You know, you make a better hamburger and you sell it for $1 and you keep the prices low. And I think, Taylor Swift discovered that with Walmart, and I think Cher did. And a lot of the recording artists, they discovered they can take back control of their work and release through a much bigger market like Walmart. And, people used to laugh at it, but that's where all the money's being made now.
So I'm a big proponent of developing innovative technology and businesses. And I believe that the internet is now making these things possible at scale that not even some of the studios or streaming services can compete with. Some of the innovative stuff, that is. When you talk to or deal with the studios now, do you feel that they're more open to new possibilities and options, or are the executives still scared to death of anything potentially career-threatening? What are your thoughts?
I don't think. I think money talks always, and I think people are completely aware of the fact that the whole industry is being taken over by YouTube and TikTok and all that. And I think they're totally into it. They just have to find ways of integrating what they're doing with the new technology. I mean, I would love to, make a film and release it on YouTube as an experiment. I mean, it's kind of scary to think, releasing things for free. But I mean, I've had a lot of things on YouTube and stuff, and I'm not really well versed in that whole thing. And I don't know how the clicks work and stuff. But I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that made a heck of a lot of money on YouTube and TikTok, and I think they'd be crazy to ignore that kind of market, because essentially people become their own studios right with their computers. They can create a whole bunch of media content that people would click on, and they can find a way to make money off of it.
By the way, networks like CNN are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to get what is essentially a very tiny audience these days.
Yeah.
And on YouTube, there's now a little boy, and he builds these plastic toy ramps to race marbles on. And he stands off camera, and he doesn't appear on screen. He stands off camera, and he does color commentary on his little marble races and his unique marble ramp. Now, it sounds funny, it sounds silly. This kid is getting 55 million views per video. 55 million. CNN and some of the other networks would kill themselves for half of that audience.
He'll be the next George Lucas.
Yeah,
that's where these people come from. That's what I mean. It's all about. I wish to heck I could have made money on my early Super 8 movies, because some of them were funny. I just didn't. I mean, they're on YouTube now if people want to check out. I put some of my early backyard epics on YouTube just because it was fun. But yeah, it's amazing what people can do out of their basements now, and the things that they create.
So I looked into it deeper, and I thought, oh, this kid's maybe some savant. He's unique. There's an army of kids out there doing these marble racing videos now on ramps, toy ramps they've created, and they're getting millions of views. It makes my head explode when I see this.
Well, I'm sure someone from Universal or Paramount has already got a deal with these kids.
So the last few times I went to a physical movie theater, it was empty. Do you feel that when the studios release movies simultaneously in theaters and on cable, this is financially detrimental and sort of cannibalistic for their sales?
No, I mean, there's nothing like seeing a movie in a theater with people, though. I think once the COVID settles down and once society returns to normal, I mean, I think I've seen 2 movies in theaters in the last year and a half. So I know what you're saying. I mean, it's been empty, but I don't think anything's ever going to replace the group experience of watching movies and laughing at funny jokes and the thrill of watching action adventures in a crowd full of 400 or 500 people. But I think, like you say, they definitely have way more respect now for the streaming services and television as a medium and as an end product. But I know. I still wanted to see the last James Bond movie in a theater. I
Yeah,
didn't want to wait for the streaming. You know, I wanted that big screen experience,
right.
and I don't think anything's going to replace that.
So I've produced TV and created some extraordinarily innovative companies and had a lot of reality TV show producers approach me about doing shows about some of my companies. But now, after seeing these marble racing videos, man, I'm
That's where you got to go.
recalculating everything.
Yeah, that's good.
You know,
Well, and yeah, I was going to say, you need a director, John. I'll
well,
come.
let me ask you this. What are your thoughts about collaborating on some projects that would incorporate more social media or
Oh,
some
I'd love.
technology?
Like I mentioned to you, I never turned down a job or an offer. I love to work with new people, and I love to travel, and I love any kind of. I love challenges and try to do something different. I mean, you know, I've directed. I mean, I remember when I was a kid in the prairies making these little movies. I was having enough trouble imagining directing like one feature film, and I've done like 40 plus feature films now. So somehow it happened, you know, and so I like to dream big, and you know, if you're positive and you're moving forward, and you're always accepting any kind of new opportunities. That's kind of what careers are all about.
So, how intrigued are you by the tech sector and the social media sector, and melding that with the sort of experiences you've had in the film and television business? Do you see that as an
Yeah, I
avenue
mean,
worth looking into?
I'm totally into that. I'm also into the kind of immersive technology that's developing, where people are, you know, the 3D glasses, and people are getting into like a complete physical experience with, like, they're drawn into the movie stories. I mean, I think that's kind of the fantasy you have when you're a kid, is you were pulled into the TV, or you were pulled into the stories now. And I think what's going to happen with movies, obviously, the next 20 years, God knows, but I think immersive entertainment is going to get a foothold. They're always, you know, how 3D movies keep coming back every year, and then they fail, and then 3D comes back again, and they try again. I mean, I think eventually that kind of route is where entertainment's going to go.
Mm,
Anything that pulls the viewer into the stories more. So I'm fascinated by all that stuff. I wouldn't say that I'm that smart about it all yet, but I'm trying to keep up on the technology and learn what's going on. I spend a lot of time trying to learn the whole you know, special effects processes and things, because that's kind of where the future lies. And a lot of the stuff that I do is creating, you know, shooting everything on green screen or blue screen, and creating all of the set environments behind it, which is fascinating to me.
nice. So, yeah, you and I will have to talk more off camera later. But so, before we wrap this up, is there anything that you would like to promote?
Oh, just my website. It's in the background over my shoulder. I spent most of COVID. I had a really, really old website that I built in 20 years back, and people used to tease me about it, because, you know, so many advances happened in the internet and website development, and they said, you got to fix this. So one of my COVID projects was to kind of update my website and go through it and upgrade and change everything. And we added about 120 video clips and all the things that I really wanted to do back in the late 90s when I started the website. And so if people want to learn more than they'll ever want to know about me, and watch some cool videos and clips and kind of how my career happened, and there's a whole bunch of press articles and things, and you can read a bunch of interviews, more than you'll ever want to know. As I said, it's www.davidwinning.com. Very original title.
Easy to
But
remember. Easy to
I
remember.
invite people to go there. I'm on Facebook and Twitter as well, and stuff, like everybody is. But yeah,
Okay.
I'd love to hear from fans and stuff. And you always think, you know, every movie you do or every show you do, if you're lucky, is going to be somebody's favorite somewhere in the world. And I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, no, I haven't seen any of your stuff," and then they'll find out I did some, like, for example, episode of this Nickelodeon series, Afraid of the Dark, from years back. That all these kids I scared, apparently, through the years in the '90s. It was kind of a popular sort of the Twilight Zone for kids. I did a lot of those shows, and something will always come up, and you'll think, "Wow, I'd forgotten I did that." But it's nice to know you affect people somehow.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? If for anybody who hasn't seen the original Twilight Zone series,
Yeah.
they're so well written, so well
Rod
crafted.
Serling was a genius. Yeah, one of the better writers in television history, I think. And even Night Gallery, which he of course had less to do with, was pretty scary from my childhood. And I was involved with Afraid of the Dark, and also the Goosebumps series on Nickelodeon. And that's kind of, I would tap into the kind of fear I had as a 9-year-old or 10-year-old watching these scary shows to make these little kids scary stories. So it was fun.
I used to love The Invaders,
Yeah.
Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, all
All
that
that
stuff.
stuff. Well, I'm a big,
Fantastic.
you know, as people tease me, I'm a huge original Star Trek fan. That's kind of how
Yeah.
I learned how to make movies, was as a 10-year-old watching the old Star Trek series and trying to figure out the camera angles and the blocking and stuff. And quite seriously, that's kind of how I learned to make movies, was watching those series.
Beautiful. So, David, I want to thank you for coming on the John Ark Show and for being so generous with your time. And you are always welcome back on the show, my friend.
Thank you, John. Take care of yourself. I appreciate it.
It's been
Bye,
our pleasure.
everybody.
It's been our pleasure.